Hello aspirants, welcome back. So the last class we're talking about the case of the different types of missiles. So far in case of your defense technology, we have discussed the different types of missiles, something like the case of Prithvi, Agni, Trishul, Akash, Nag. Apart from these particular missiles, we have discussed about the case of the Astra missile, Sagarika missile, at the same time the Shaurya missile, right, and all these things. Now moving on to the next part of this one, that is Mission Shakti. The next part of this one is Mission Shakti. So the moment you are talking about the case of Mission Shakti, what is Mission Shakti? So in case of your nuclear technology, we have discussed about Operation Shakti. Now, Operation Shakti is related to the second nuclear test which was carried by India on 11th and 13th May of 1998. Now, the moment you're talking about the case of Mission Shakti, this is as activity, or as you can even say this is one particular test which has been successfully developed and tested by DRDO. So one by the case of Department of Atomic Energy, and this particular one is by DRDO, Defense Research Development Organization. Now this particular Mission Shakti, the chief architect of Mission Shakti was Dr. G. Satish Reddy. So Dr. G. Satish Reddy, when he was the chief of DRDO, at that particular time, this particular program which are calling it as a Mission Shakti, it has been designed and developed under him. Now the question is that what is this particular Mission Shakti? Now the moment you're talking about the case of orbits, now we know that we have got some orbits around the earth. We have got some orbits in space at various heights. So the first orbit that you talk about is a case of the LEO orbit. At the same time, the second one is a case of the MEO orbit. And then above this one, you have got one more orbit which is known as the GEO orbit. Now already we have discussed that LEO orbit, it is at a height of around 160 kilometers to 1000 kilometers. Now this is the height of the LEO orbit. Now at the same time, the moment you're talking about the case of the MEO orbit. Now MEO orbit, the height of this one is something around 5000 to 12,000 kilometers. That is the height of this particular orbit. At the same time, the GEO orbit, it is at a height of around 35,786 kilometers. Now the question is that what is this particular Mission Shakti? Now in this particular case, suppose that you have got any particular spy satellite. So you have got any particular spy satellite in the LEO orbit at a height of around 350 kilometers to 400 kilometers. Now this particular spy satellite is launched by some other country, and it is trying to record each and every particular activity which is taking place in our particular nation. In simple terms, the satellite which is in the LEO orbit, it is trying to monitor closely, analyze closely, monitor the activities that are taking place in our particular country. Then in that particular case, to destroy this particular spy satellite, which is at a height of around 350 kilometers to 400 kilometers from Launch Complex 3, from Launch Complex 4, that is nothing but the case of your Wheeler Island, or as the case of your Balasore. Now from these particular missile launch complex 3 as well as the case of Launch Complex 4, Prithvi Defense Vehicle Mark II will be launched. Prithvi Defense Vehicle Mark II MK2 will be launched, and this particular missile will be able to destroy this particular satellite completely. The missile will be in a position to destroy the satellite completely. So remember one thing, any particular satellite which is placed in the LEO orbit, it will orbit around the earth, it will move around the earth in just 90 minutes. The satellite which is placed in the LEO orbit will take only 90 minutes to complete one orbit. Now here in this particular case, we are trying to destroy any particular spy satellite which is in the LEO orbit at a height of around 350 kilometers to 400 kilometers using the Prithvi Defense Vehicle Mark II. So India is the fourth country to have such particular technology. So the first country being United States of America. So USA already have this particular technology. At the same time, Russia has this particular technology. At the same time, China has this particular technology. And India is the fourth country in the world to have this particular technology, the fourth country in the world to have this particular technology. So the movement you're talking about the case of Mission Shakti. So how this particular Mission Shakti looks like. So here in this particular case, right. So the movement you're talking about the case of Mission Shakti. So how this particular Mission Shakti will be carried out? How this particular Mission Shakti will be carried out? So here in this case we have, this is the case of the Prithvi Defense Vehicle Mark II, and here in this case we have got a particular satellite which is orbiting around the earth. Now the main objective of Mission Shakti is to destroy that particular satellite which using this particular vehicle. Now the question is that how this particular mission will be carried out? How this particular mission will be carried out? So basically the movement you're talking about the case of a missile. So the each and every particular Prithvi Defense Vehicle Mark II will have got three different stages like this. We'll have got three different parts. Now out of all these particular things, this is the one which is going to be very, very crucial. The reason for that one, this is the place wherein you're having the device which you are calling it as a laser guided device which is used for destroying that particular satellite. Right. So the moment the missile launches, the moment the missile is launched, stage 1, stage 2 as well as the stage 3. Now the moment the missile is launched from Launch Complex 3 or in the case of Launch Complex 4, then in that particular case at various heights with respect to the ground, maybe at a height of 50 kilometers or 100 kilometers or else 200 kilometers, all these particular stages will get separated. So initially you're talking about the case of stage 1. Now this is the stage wherein you're talking about the takeoff from the Launch Complex 3 or as the Launch Complex 4 from Orissa. So after this one, after this particular thing, after the Prithvi Defense Vehicle Mark II lifts off, takes off from Orissa, then at a height of around 80 kilometers from the ground, the stage 1 will end and the stage 2 will commence and the stage 2 will start. And this particular stage 2 will carry till 200 to 250 kilometers. So after that one, the stage 3 is left. And this particular stage 3, it is known as the kill vehicle stage. It is known as the kill vehicle. So which vehicle you are trying to kill? Nothing but the case of the spy satellite. Right, the spy satellite has to be destroyed completely, which are calling it as the kill vehicle stage. Now the moment the third stage begins, this particular topmost part which are calling it as the heat shield, right, this particular topmost part which are calling it as the heat shield, this particular heat shield will get detached. The heat shield will get separated. Now this is the place wherein you're having the laser devices which are used for destroying any particular spy satellite, or else suppose that if at all you're talking about the case of SLV, ASLV, PSLV, GSLV, which are used for launching, which are used for placing any particular satellite in the orbit, even that particular launch vehicles will have this particular stage which are calling it as the heat shield. The heat shield has to get separated, and once the heat shield gets separated, then this particular part which is consisting of the satellite or else which is consisting of the laser guided device in this particular case will exposed. Now the moment the heat shield is getting separated, now this particular thing which is known as the infrared seeker, the infrared seeker, now this particular infrared seeker will lock that particular spy satellite. So here in this particular case, you are having one particular thing which is known as the infrared seeker, right? So the infrared seeker which is present in this particular device, the moment the heat shield gets separated, it gets exposed. As a result of which, this particular device which are calling it as the infrared seeker, it is locking the spy satellite. The moment the spy satellite is locked, the satellite wherever it goes, the satellite wherever it moves, even this particular device will follow it, and at one particular fine point, the spy satellite is destroyed totally, completely, which you are calling it as the Mission Shakti, which is known as the Mission Shakti. Now, India is the fourth country to have such technology. So the other three countries in the world which are having this particular technology is United States. At the same time, the case of Russia as well as the case of China are the other three countries which are having this particular technology. Then, moving on to the next one here. Right, the next one is the case of Pradyumna Ballistic Missile Interceptor. Pradyumna Ballistic Missile Interceptor. Now this particular Pradyumna Ballistic Missile Interceptor, it is also known as Prithvi Air Defense System, also known as Prithvi Air Defense System. Now the question is that what is this particular ballistic missile interceptor? So first and foremost thing, interceptor in the sense any particular device which is used to trace, any particular device which is used to identify any particular incoming signal or as a case of incoming device. Now that is what is known as an interceptor. So how this particular Prithvi Air Defense System will work? How this particular Pradyumna Ballistic Missile Interceptor will work? Now suppose that here in this particular case, you are having one particular target here, or else we'll talk about the case of our particular country here. Now this is our particular country. Now some X country, could be any country in the world. Now this particular country is trying to launch a missile on India. Now here in this particular case, the missile has to be a short range ballistic missile, or else the missile has to be a medium range ballistic missile. The missile could be an SRBM, or the missile could be even an MRBM also. Now suppose that X country has launched an SRBM or MRBM on our particular country. Now we know that these particular SRBMs or else the case of MRBMs, they can reach to a height of almost around 600 to 800 or sometimes even 1000 kilometers also from the ground. The moment the missile has taken off, it tries to travel the maximum part of its journey in the outer space. Now after traveling maximum part of its journey in the outer space, when this particular missile, when it is trying to re-enter into Earth's atmosphere, when the missile is trying to re-enter into Earth's atmosphere. Earth's atmosphere will start from an altitude of around 100 kilometers from the ground. So here in this particular case, the missile is re-entering into Earth's atmosphere. So what is this particular ballistic missile interceptor? What will it do? Now this particular Prithvi Air Defense System, or else the case of Pradyumna ballistic missile interceptor, it will locate, it will identify, it will trace this particular incoming SRBM or MRBM, and it will immediately launch Prithvi Defense Vehicle Mark II, and this particular incoming missile will be destroyed beyond the Earth atmosphere. It will be destroyed beyond the Earth atmosphere. In simple terms, we can say that this particular incoming ballistic missile, which is launched by enemy, will be destroyed by the Prithvi Air Defense Vehicle Mark II before it enters into Earth atmosphere. In simple terms, maybe at a height of 200 kilometers or 300 kilometers. So before it enters into Earth's atmosphere, the missile will be totally destroyed. Now that is what is known as the Pradyumna ballistic missile interceptor. So what is this device doing? So here in this particular case, first and foremost thing, the incoming ballistic missiles, SRBM or as the case of MRBM, they are identified, they are located, they are traced. At the same time, to destroy those particular incoming ballistic missiles, so here we are launching Prithvi Defense Vehicle Mark II, and this particular Prithvi Defense Vehicle Mark II will destroy that particular incoming ballistic missile at a height of more than 80 kilometers from the ground, 80 kilometers from the surface. That is what is known as the Prithvi Air Defense System. Now India is the fourth country to have such technology. The first country to have such technology is United States of America. At the same time, second country is China. The third country to have this particular technology is, the first country is USA. The second country to have this particular technology is Russia. And the third country to have this particular technology is Israel. China is not having this particular technology. So India is the fourth country to have this particular technology. So if at all any particular country is launching any particular SRBM or MRBM, then in that particular case, using Prithvi Defense Vehicle Mark II, that particular incoming ballistic missiles can be destroyed before they enter into Earth's space, before they enter into Earth's atmosphere, which is known as the Prithvi Air Defense System Mark II, which is known as the Prithvi Air Defense System, or else Pradyumna ballistic missile interceptor. Pradyumna ballistic missile interceptor. So what is this particular Mission Shakti? The target of the test was a satellite which is present in low Earth orbit, and this particular satellite was destroyed using an anti-satellite weapon. You're talking about the case of anti-tanks. You're talking about the case of anti-aircrafts. Now we are talking about the case of anti-satellite. Coming classes we will be discussing about anti-ship also. So the weapons which are used for destroying huge tanks, huge vehicles, we call them as anti-tank. And the weapons which are used for destroying the fighter planes, we call them as anti-aircraft. And the weapons which are used for destroying satellites, we call them as anti-satellite weapon. The ASAT test utilized a modified anti-ballistic missile which is known as the Prithvi Defense Vehicle Mark II. And the other countries which have developed this particular technology is USA, Russia and China have developed Mission Shakti. Right. Then you talk about the case of the next one, that is the case of Marich. So after Mission Shakti, At the same time, after the Prithvi Defense Vehicle Mark II, moving on to the next type here, that is the case of Marich. Now, what is this particular Marich? So basically, we need to know about few terms here. One term is known as torpedo. So what is a torpedo and what is a missile? So the moment we're talking about the case of torpedo, torpedoes are self-propelled vehicles. Torpedoes are self-propelled vehicles. It means that in case of these torpedoes, there is no fuel that is used. In case of missile, we have discussed, in case of missile, solid fuels are used. In case of missiles, liquid fuels are used. But torpedoes are self-propelled vehicles. It means that the more is the amount of pressure that you apply, the more the distance it will travel. Now, these torpedoes, they were shown in one particular movie which is known as Ghazi. I hope you might have seen that particular movie. So the amount of pressure with which these torpedoes are released, so based on that, the torpedo will just keep on advancing. The torpedo will just keep on traveling, will just keep on moving. So they are completely self-propelled vehicles. They do not have any particular fuel. They do not have any particular fuel. At the same time, the moment you're talking about the case of torpedoes, the earlier torpedoes, the olden days torpedoes. Now these torpedoes, they used to travel only in a straight line path like this. Maybe a straight line path in this way, or it may be a straight line path like this. Which means the earlier torpedoes, they never used to travel something like this. So whether they are traveling in an inclined path or else the case of straight line path, they used to always have only a straight line path. At the same time, the earlier torpedoes, they never used to detect, earlier torpedoes cannot detect, the olden days or as the earlier torpedoes, they cannot detect incoming torpedoes. They cannot detect incoming torpedoes. Now, what is the meaning of this one? Now, suppose that you're talking about the case of, this is a submarine. So here we say that this is a particular submarine which is belonging to our nation. At the same time, you talk about the case of the enemy submarine. So for example, just imagine we are talking about the case of the Ghazi movie here. So in that particular movie, it was shown very, very clearly that the Pakistani submarine, which tried to destroy the Indian submarine, it releases the torpedoes. But the Indian submarine just keeps on escaping the torpedoes which were released by the Pakistani submarine. So at one particular point of time, the frustrated, the vexed, the irritated Pakistani commander, Pakistani submarine commander, he announces to release three torpedoes simultaneously in three different directions. Now, even in this particular case, the Indian submarine escapes by placing the by placing submarine at this particular point. So, even when the irritated, frustrated Pakistani commando of that particular submarine, right? So, when he releases three torpedoes simultaneously in three different directions, even in that particular case, the Indian submarine will escape by placing the submarine at this particular point. So the conclusion from this particular thing is that these torpedoes, they always travel only in a straight line path. They cannot detect any particular incoming torpedo. Now coming back to the case of Marich, the speciality of Marich is that Marich will always travel in a zigzag path like this. Marich will always travel in a zigzag path like this. At the same time, the other speciality of Marich is that this particular Marich can identify, it can trace any particular incoming torpedo also. For example, suppose that this is Marich. Suppose that enemy has launched torpedo towards our particular submarine. Then in that particular case, this particular Marich which is traveling in zigzag path, it will identify that particular incoming torpedo. It will identify that particular incoming torpedo and it starts moving towards that one, and that particular incoming torpedo will be destroyed by Marich. That particular incoming torpedo will be destroyed by Marich. So the speciality of Marich is that it can identify any particular incoming torpedoes. At the same time, it can destroy those particular incoming torpedoes also. So what is Marich? It is an advanced torpedo defense system which can be fired from all the frontline ships as on today's date. So whether you're talking about the main advanced ships or as the case of the advanced submarines, so from all these particular things, this particular advanced torpedo can be launched. It is capable of detecting, locating and neutralizing or destroying any incoming torpedoes also. It can detect, it can locate and it can neutralize an incoming torpedo. So what are torpedoes? Torpedoes are self-propelled weapons with a warhead and can be used under or else on the surface of water. They can be used to destroy any submarine. They can be used to destroy even a warship also. It means that these torpedoes, they can travel inside the water. At the same time, they can travel even on the surface of water also. Now, this particular Marich has been designed and developed by DRDO in the recent times. Then moving on to the next missile here, Rudram missile. Now, this particular missile is in news in the last few days back, you can see. In the last week of May, this particular missile was tested. Rudram 2 was tested. Now, what is this particular Rudram basically? So, Rudram is an anti-radiation air-to-surface missile. A missile which is launched from fighter planes. A missile which is launched from helicopters. That is the reason why you are calling this one as an air-to-surface. It is an anti-radiation air-to-surface missile. Anti-radiation air-to-surface missile. Now, the movement you're talking about the case of anti-radiation in the sense, the moment this particular missile lands in any particular region, lands in any particular place, in that particular region, in that particular case, in that particular place, all types of communication systems, all types of communication networks, all types of radio networks will be totally stopped, will be totally blocked. That is what you're calling it as an anti-radiation missile. So, anti-radiation missiles are designed to detect, track and also neutralize enemy, adversary in the sense enemy, enemy's radar, communication assets and other radio frequency sources which in general are part of their air defense system. So, the moment the anti-radiation missile it lands in any particular region, it can neutralize, it can destroy, it can track. So, all these particular things belonging to what? Enemy's radars, enemy's communication systems, or as the case of the radio frequency sources, all those particular things, they can be destroyed using this particular anti-radiation missile which is known as Rudram. And this particular Rudram missile, it can be launched from a height ranging from 500 meters to 15 kilometers. At the same time, the last week of May 2024, Rudram 2 missile was tested. Again, it is an upgraded version of this particular Rudram missile. And the thing is that this particular Rudram 2 missile will replace KH-31 anti-radiation missiles which we have imported from Russia, KH-31. Rudram 2 missiles will replace KH-31 anti-radiation missiles that we have imported from Russia. Then moving on to the next one, that is Abhyas. So what is this particular Abhyas? Abhyas is an indigenously developed high-speed expandable aerial target. Now the movement you're talking about the case of Trishul, the movement you're talking about the case of Akash. Now these are the surface to air missiles. At the same time, the movement you're talking about the case of Astra, it is an air to air missile. Now in order to test these particular missiles, we need to have an aerial target. Now whenever you are trying to test Trishul, the main objective of Trishul is to destroy any particular device which is in air, any particular object which is in air. So for that, what we are doing, from the land, from the surface, you are launching the Trishul missile. Now this particular missile needs to go and hit any target which is moving in air. So for that particular thing, definitely we need to have a pseudo target. We cannot use the real fighter planes because they are involving some thousands of crores of rupees, at the same time the cost of the human life. Now that is the reason why for testing this particular surface to air missiles, we need to have a pseudo target, and that particular pseudo target is nothing but the case of Abhyas, which is a high speed expandable aerial target. It is a drone, nothing but the case of unmanned aerial vehicle. So it is an unmanned aerial vehicle that will be used as a target for various missile systems, for different types of missile systems. That may be Trishul, that may be Akash, that may be Akash weapon system. So for all these particular things, this particular Abhyas, a high speed expandable aerial target, will be used as a target, for testing all these technologies. So for this particular high speed expandable aerial target, the navigation is provided by micro electromechanical system, which is based on inertial navigation system for navigation. Now this is a technology that we are using in case of Abhyas, right? So this is about the case of the Rudram missiles, at the same time the case of Abhyas, at the same time the case of the Mission Shakti, and then the Prithvi air defense system. So in the next class, in the next video, we'll be discussing about the case of the NASAMS 2, at the same time the Iron Dome, at the same time the case of Sea Dome, at the same time the case of the drone system which is being developed by DRDO. Right? Thank you.